Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Build Your Copywriting Business podcast. Hey there, Kate.
Hello.
Hello. Okay, guys. Today we are going to talk resolutions. I would even be tempted to say New Year's resolutions, in which case, if you're listening to this on the date when it comes out, you're probably going, Nicki, Kate, you big goofballs, it's March. Get that. Totally get that. But we chose this to be released on this date for a couple of very specific reasons. Number one, the most New Year's resolutions are given up, ditched by people in like February.
Yeah.
And that's if they last that long. So if you had career resolutions at the beginning of the year and if you've stuck with them, awesome. You're a superstar. If you have not, totally
Still
fine.
a superstar.
Exactly.
Still a superstar.
Still a superstar. You are human. And it could be too that you set up resolutions that were not designed to carry you through, that were not easy to execute on. And we're going to go into all of that, of course, now. But the second reason, Kate, if you want to get into the second reason. Oh, I'm sorry. I probably should tell you the second reason is.
Sure.
Well, we kind of know, but just the fact that it is, see, this is what happens in a podcast. We might as well just leave this in.
Yeah.
The second reason is that January 1st is an arbitrary date.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah.
You did know.
See, it's a reason that I don't even think of as a reason, because we should be setting goals consistently throughout the year. And if we don't achieve a goal, that doesn't mean we failed. It means we need to reevaluate it. We need to reassess it. We need to look why we couldn't achieve it. Was it too big? Which is one of the biggest reasons why resolutions are set up for failure. We have this big goal of over the course of an entire year, I'm going to do this thing. And then we never stop to break down the steps instead of actually looking at it as like, okay, fine, January 1st, I'm motivated to set a new goal, but I'm actually going to set a goal for the next couple of weeks or months or whatever. And then I'm going to build on that goal and have the end goal in mind and whatnot. But yeah, the arbitrary date. And I get that there's this energy that comes with the new year.
Yes.
But I do think the more that we can set resolutions whenever throughout the year, we have to. Otherwise, you set a resolution in January, you work on it for a couple of weeks, and then you're done. And then maybe you revisit an entire year later. That's going to take decades to make any meaningful progress on a goal. I know I've done it with learning languages. You go at it for a couple of weeks, and then my vocabulary is still this big. It's tiny. It's still itty bitty.
Pequeño.
Sí.
Scientists have found that starting on certain big dates can help people carry through. So it makes sense that we as humans want to start our resolutions on January 1st. However, January 1st is not the only big day. If you want a momentous occasion, it doesn't have to be January 1st. It can be the first of the month. It can be the first day of the week. It can be a birthday. It can be the beginning of spring. It can be the beginning of a new quarter, January, February, March. So the new quarter begins in April.
Be a new moon if we're going to go into, some.
Love that.
Yeah,
very woo.
Why not?
Yes.
Yes. Why not?
Mercury retrograde ends, start a new resolution, whatever floats your boat. But the point is that you don't have to, first of all, you don't have to give up on things if they just kind of fizzled out after New Year's. But second, to Kate's point, you can pick any date to get started. If you want a momentous date, great, pick a momentous date, but it does not have to be, and dear goodness, should not be the first of the year, because it will take you 10 years to learn French, Spanish, German.
To learn 5 words in French, Spanish, German.
You're doing a great job.
Thank you. But to the point of breaking down these big goals, the one example, and this might not be the best example for everyone, so insert what works for you. But for me, I was thinking, okay, if my goal is to start cooking more and eat healthier throughout the new year, I would be setting myself up for failure if I thought, okay, January 1st, I am going to meal prep for the entire week. And I'm going to go in ready to meal prep every single day versus I'm going to look up one recipe that I feel like I can commit to making. And maybe I'm looking up I'm not even buying the ingredients necessarily. Maybe I am, but we forget that there are all these steps to it. There is finding the recipe. There is, can I actually reading through it? Is this on a timeline for me? I want like a 20-minute. I can't have, an hour and a half prep and then 3 hours in the oven. No one wants that. And so, and then buying the ingredients. Do I have all the ingredients in my pitch? Do I need to make a trip to the grocery store? When can I fit in that trip to the grocery store? If I'm making this, will it have leftovers? Do I need other meals? So there are all these questions that we forget to answer and we compile into, I'm just going to do this one thing. And then it gets super overwhelming. I hate going to the grocery store.
Mm-hmm. So, but even to your learn a language, I'm going to learn French this year. I'm going to become fluent in French this year. That is a big overarching goal with a ton of tiny little steps in there. And if your resolution is, I'm going to learn French, learning French is not an action step. It is a result, but it's not an action step. And to have that as your resolution, you have to have all kinds of other things broken out. Okay, well, how am I going to learn? Am I going to learn online? Am I going to learn in person in a course? Am I going to learn what are the mile markers? How will I know that I'm making progress? All of these kinds of things as we're thinking, and it's great to have these overarching goals, certainly. But if the overarching goals are what you're focusing on, you're going to have a really hard time actually getting there because there are too many steps in between. It's like saying, all right, I'm going to get in my car and I'm going to drive to San Francisco without having a map, without having a plan to get there, without really having any gas in your car, without snacks, without any, road trip stuff, all of that kind of stuff, unless you're already in San Francisco, in which case it's probably very easy. But all of this needs to be broken down into littler things. I forget exactly what book on habits it was. I read a lot. It was probably Atomic Habits because everybody refers to Atomic Habits. But talking about if you want to achieve a goal, what habits can you set up that will make it effectively inevitable for you to get to that end result? Say that your goal is to send 5 pitches a week. Okay. And that might even set 5 pitches a week. Okay. But there are also still a lot of steps within that. So what habits can you set up? Can you set up a habit so that every Monday morning, and this is just an example, but every Monday morning you find 10 new companies that you might be interested in reaching out to. And every Tuesday morning you look for you figure out what ideas you're going to include in your pitches. And every Wednesday morning, you do the initial draft. And every Thursday morning, you do whatever. But how can you break this down and how can you make it habitual? And you can see how if you made this a habit, every Monday I do this, every Tuesday I do this, every Wednesday, it is virtually inevitable that you will hit your goal because you've made a habit of all of these smaller elements. And then quite frankly, too, you could even make that your resolution. Your resolution is that every Monday I do this. My resolution is every Tuesday I do this. However you want to do it, whatever feels like it's going to motivate you best. But setting, I just love that concept of if I put the right things in place, hitting my goal is inevitable. I mean, how great does that feel and how freeing? It's not I hope I do this. It's I follow through on these habits and make them small so they're doable, but I follow through on these habits. And when I do, it's inevitable that I hit that goal. It feels so freeing to me.
Mm-hmm. I think the other thing to consider when setting resolutions, and I'm going to use pitching, continue to use this as an example, is not necessarily putting a hard and fast number on things, to give yourself a range to say, okay, if sending 5 pitches a week is roughly your goal, maybe you say, okay, I'm going to try to send between 3 and 6 pitches a week. And you give yourself kind of a more of a range so that if you're not hitting that exact number, you're also not beating yourself up and you're saying, no, I'm within the range that I want to be in. Yay. I think that can be a lot more motivating than not, setting a really high goal and then not achieving it when you're still making progress on it though. But it feels all or nothing is all that's to say. And so giving yourself the space so that it doesn't feel, if I don't do this, then I'm failing.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. I think another perspective to think about is we tend to set up goals for things that we want to do, and we make them a resolution because it's stuff we in theory want to do. Logically, we want to do it, but but our hearts aren't in it. There's something about it that we haven't identified our big why, or we haven't leaned into that. We kind of don't want to, right? That's all I want to lose weight. Well, I want to do this. I want to do, I mean, Kate, and I don't mean to call you out here, but I guess I'm going to do it anyway. If you really wanted to learn a language,
I clearly don't.
You would do it, right? But like it's intellectually you want to learn a language,
right?
But it's not in your heart enough yet to make it a priority.
There's not enough urgency for it for me.
Not enough urgency. There isn't a big why for you. And so your big why, which is getting into like, why does this matter to you? It's not just, well, I want to be a copywriter. Okay, but why? Well, I want to have more freedom in my schedule. I want to be able to be at my kids' soccer games. I want to do work that feels fulfilling. I want to, so ask yourself these questions to get at the deeper essence of why this matters to you. And it's the same if you don't have that deeper essence of why it matters, it's going to be really hard to actually get yourself to take these actions. But in addition to that deeper why, you will find it a lot easier to achieve your goals if you find some way to make them enjoyable. If everything you have on your to-do list is a slog, is stuff that you don't particularly want to do, then you're not going to do it. You might be able to push yourself to do it, will yourself to do it for a couple of days or maybe even a couple of weeks. But this is part of the reason why New Year's resolutions, people give up on them, because they're not fun. They're not enjoyable. So how can you, as you're looking at the goals that you have, how can you find a way to make them fun? So for example, if you're breaking down the tasks and, one of the particular tasks of pitching, you're like, oh, this is the one the researching companies, our students know that part's easy, and even kind of fun, but maybe the coming up with ideas, or maybe the drafting the initial pitch email, maybe that's where you're getting some resistance. And again, pro tip, the more that you do it, the easier it becomes. Sometimes it's just the getting started, but how can you make that more fun? Is there a coffee shop you love to go to? Can you go to the coffee shop and be like, all right, I'm going to go to the coffee shop, but while I'm there, I have to do XYZ, or I'm going to do this and then I'm going to reward myself by doing something else, or any number of things. What makes something feel a little bit lighter, a little bit more fun, a little bit more enjoyable? But also, in addition to making it fun, setting up habits, all that kind of thing, your resolutions don't have to be these giant overarching things. They can be things that you can accomplish before the end of the year, or they can be things that you have a monthly resolution or a weekly resolution or something, or don't call it, if resolution feels weird, don't call it a resolution, but they don't have to be, the people often go to big, like, this is the year I'm going to make 6 figures in my business. I'm going to lose 40 pounds. I'm going to learn to speak German, whatever it is. It does not have to be something huge. And actually to that point, we have a suggestion of some things maybe to think about. It's personal for everybody, but some ideas for smaller, more manageable resolutions. And when they're smaller, more manageable, it's more likely that you will actually do them and you will feel the benefits of accomplishment.
Mm-hmm. So one of the first ones is not settling for a crummy job. So if you are just thinking about copywriting, I think that's maybe a bigger potentially goal. If you're looking for a career change, you're unsatisfied with what you're doing, the work that you're doing, just making the resolution, okay, I'm deciding not to settle for this. And that doesn't have to mean that you switch jobs this year. It could just mean you start exploring your options. It could mean getting on LinkedIn, seeing what's out there. And so if it's copywriting and that copywriting interests you, maybe it's going through the backlog of this podcast and seeing what episode titles jump out to you. So you don't have to start at episode 1 and work your way all the way to whatever, 200 plus episodes that we're on. Choose what floats your boat. But if you do want to work your way through, that's fine too. So just taking the time to think about what would make you feel fulfilled, what would make you feel like going to work in the morning is enjoyable, that you don't have the, scary Sundays as they call them. But then if you're already working as a copywriter too, I think this is an important one to reevaluate the clients that you're working with. Mm-hmm. Are there any that are not fun to work for anymore? And is there anything you could do that would make it more enjoyable to work with them? Or is it time to maybe fire a client? We have an episode, we will link to that, of how to fire a client. It's not as dramatic as it sounds. You don't want to burn bridges. We're not actually, there's no real flame involved. We want to keep this very, safe.
Safe, amiable, generally good and happy. Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And there are within building your copywriting career, as your students know, there are a lot of different milestones that you can aim for. It could be sending out your first pitch. It could be telling people that it could be, all right, I'm going to tell my family, or I'm going to tell my 3 closest friends that I'm becoming a copywriter. I'm starting a copywriting, or whatever. It could be you resolve to get your portfolio built, your portfolio website built. It could be any number of I don't want to say smaller milestones, because they're still very, very important. Big, yeah. But yeah, exactly. They're underneath the full umbrella of this year I become a copywriter, or this year. And then along those things, revamping your portfolio website. If you've been working for a while and you think, ooh, I really need to update those samples. Now's a great time to do it. But you can use any number of these sub milestones. I don't want to say smaller. Sub milestones as your resolutions, and they could be this: my resolution for this month is to do this, and my resolution for next month is to do this. However it breaks down, but you could use any number of those. Whatever's the next most important thing on your to-do list.
Well, the reality is any big milestone, like become a copywriter, is made up of all of those tiny ones. So if we skip them and we want to go straight to that doesn't work. That's never going to work. Same thing with learning a language. It's I have to learn present tense before I go to past tense, before I go to future tense, before I go to, I don't even know the other tenses. I do, but don't. You need to learn maybe colors and numbers before you learn the word for accelerator or some other word.
Hyacinth.
Yes.
Yes.
The word I haven't thought about in quite a long time in English, never mind in a foreign language.
Well, see, there you go. You're in big trouble overseas if you want to buy a hyacinth. Yeah. Yeah, but it's breaking down all of these individual tasks, just like we were saying earlier, it makes it so much easier to get to the bigger task. And then you can also have resolutions that support your main goals, but are not part of are not the direct tasks to get you there. For example, you could, if you find yourself being nervous about telling people in your life, like we were saying earlier, maybe your goal is to each week or each month tell 3 new people that you are a copywriter, or to just put it out into the world. If you go to cocktail parties and they ask you what you do, if you always say, well, I used to be a teacher, instead of telling them what you do. Oh, actually, I'm a copywriter. Da, da, da. Maybe it could even be strangers. You're in line at Starbucks or in line at the grocery store, and I'm sure there's a way to do it a little bit less awkwardly than, hey, I'm a copywriter. But you know what? Who cares? You're going to see these people anyway. That's a good goal, just to make things less scary. But like, how can you put it out into the world? And a goal of telling 3 people, even 3 people a month, it starts getting you some traction. And the more you do it, the less nervous you become about it. It's always before we do something like, oh my gosh, I haven't told any of my friends I'm going to become a copywriter. Like, okay, first of all, if you have friends that would be like, oh, you're becoming a copywriter, that's lame. What kind of friends do you have? You should have supportive friends who are like, it's great. Awesome. I'm not really sure what it is, but tell me more about it. Those are the kind of friends you want to have anyway. Good litmus test for your friends. But also we tend to build things up before we actually do them. There's a very good chance that when you say, I'm becoming a copywriter, marketing and advertising writer, people will say, oh, that's cool. Tell me more. How'd you get into that? And then it becomes less scary. And then as you tell the second person, the third person, in fact, it might get so easy that you might be like, well, that was my resolution for the next couple of months, but now it's not challenging anymore. So let me find a different resolution. But try to find something that has an impact, but also maybe challenges you, just even if it's just a little bit.
Yeah, that's another good one. I feel like to put a range on. I'm going to
Mhm.
do,
Oh, yeah.
3 to 5 people a week.
Mhm.
Same thing with, reaching out to recruiters and saying, who's in my area? Can I meet up with them for coffee and see what opportunities they've got going on? Can I find an event in my area once a quarter and show up to that event? And maybe that scares me. I don't like, going to an event where I don't know anyone.
Mhm.
But that's a great challenge too, to get out
Mhm.
there and everyone else too at these types of events often don't know anyone else. So you're in great company.
Yeah.
And what's the point of going to a networking event if you're going to just talk with your friends that you already know? That defeats the
Mhm.
purpose.
Yes, I will tell you, I'm the queen of, I don't know if this could be the queen of this, but hating to go into a room where I don't know anybody. I hate it. Oh, it makes me so uncomfortable. It gets me so nervous. And I can be a pretty gregarious person and can be the person to be the mixer and all that kind of stuff. But I hate going into it. However, to Kate's point, these kind of events, the vast majority of people feel that way anyway. And the vast majority of people are also more than happy to chat with you about anything, more than, well, probably mostly about what you're there at the event to talk about, but more than happy to chat with you, are glad that you started a conversation with them because they're feeling awkward and strange too. Not to get too far off on this topic, but it's important to know.
I think one of the other things and it comes up a lot we see it with new copywriters all the time, of wanting to learn everything there is to know, not just about copywriting, but about marketing as a whole. And as a gentle reminder, marketing is made up of dozens and dozens of careers, individual careers. And each person, a web developer is going to know very little about copywriting. And a graphic designer might know a tiny bit about copywriting, but they're not a copywriter, and vice versa. We don't have to be designers. And so if there is something that you're curious about and you want to learn, I think there's two things. One, maybe you pick up a book and you read a book about that professional development. Maybe, it's about this skill. I'm curious about this. I've heard about web development. I heard SEO. Maybe there's tech that you're intrigued about when it comes to, you're writing copy for your clients for emails, but you have no idea how the back end works, or you've built your website on Squarespace, but you want to dabble more and maybe in WordPress or whatever it is. I think the temptation to want to learn all of these things as a full career is much like wanting to learn a full language and be fluent in a year. And while is it possible someone could be fluent within a year? Yes. But if your goal is to become a copywriter, you're going to slow yourself down immensely if you try to take on every other career possible within marketing. If you are seeing job postings for this out in the world, these are clients that is a huge red flag. And it's also, maybe they'll find someone, but people put everything in a job posting.
It's a wish list.
Why not? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so focus on your goal. But if there's things that intrigue you, I think setting those smaller goals of whether it's reading a book, whether it's reading one blog a week about a particular topic.
And remember too, that feeling like you need to learn everything and you need to learn all of these different careers. That's a form of exactly. That's a form of resistance. That's your brain going, no, you don't know. You don't know enough. You have to learn all this stuff before you could even possibly begin to put yourself out there as a copywriter.
Or be valuable enough.
Exactly. That is resistance. I've been in marketing for more than 20 years now. And there are plenty of things I do know about marketing, but plenty of things that I don't still know, and different avenues. I don't know. I know such a small amount about web development, even really about SEO, even really about SEM, and like all of these things. You don't have to know all about them. And this feeling of I have to know all of this stuff in order to be valuable is that's your resistance kicking up. If you want to be a copywriter, you need to know about copywriting, and you need to write copy well. That's what you need to do. And other elements of marketing, you'll pick those up as you go. Your clients don't expect you to be an expert in anything, or even adept in anything outside of copywriting. That's what they hired you for. And that's what they want from you. They might ask you questions like, oh, I'm wondering about this other stuff. In which case, if you don't know it, say, you know what, I'm not sure about that. Let me look into it and get back to you. And then do a little bit of research. But you are not expected to know. If someone's hiring you to be a copywriter, you're not expected to know anything outside of that. You will learn this stuff as you go, as you work. I didn't take a marketing course to learn all the things I've learned about marketing. I have picked up all of it All of it? Yeah, absolutely all of it. In the course of working. And that has been more than enough to support my copywriting career.
Yeah, I think in this actually, I'll share one of my resolutions for this year. Yeah, I know, because this made me think of it, which my resolution is to ask for help when I need it. And I think this plays into feeling like we have to be everything for everyone. And we are so afraid to say, I don't know, or to ask for help from someone who's actually an expert in whatever it is that we need help in. Or maybe we want to learn, but we can also ask someone to help teach us. We don't have to necessarily, sometimes it might be like, hey, I really need you to do this. I did it the other night. I practiced it. I asked my dad to take my dog out for a walk. And it felt really hard to do and I felt guilty about doing it, but I did it. So obviously in a case like that, he's not going to teach me how to walk my dog. I know how to walk my dog. But so there might be cases where you're asking literally for something to be done, but then there might be also cases, hey, can you show me this? Speaking of my dad, he's going to show me how to put on my winter tires, which is very exciting. So then I'll learn something new and then I will have that skill and I can pass that on to people or I'll know how to do it in the future. And the same thing is true, I think, with copywriting, with learning things about marketing. If there's something you're interested in, that's why I said maybe read a blog every week about in this industry. Maybe you have familiarity with certain terms and you don't like that feeling of not knowing and being unsure. And I get that. And I think being okay with that feeling, though, is something worth practicing. Maybe that's a resolution to be okay. I don't know. And that's okay. I can either find out, I can hit Google and see what comes up, but I can also reach out to other people. And if a client asks me something that I don't know about that has nothing to do with copywriting or is copywriting adjacent, it's okay for me to say, hey, you know what? I'll look into that. I might have a resource I can send you. That's not my zone of genius. It's not what you do. And that's okay. I feel like we feel like we're not enough when you are enough. Copywriting, being a copywriter is enough. It is an entire career. And if later on, you want to add to it, that's fine too. But if you don't have to. But I think this stems from this fear of not being enough.
Yeah.
And you are, and I am. I'm enough.
Yes.
And you are too, Nicki.
Thank you. Yeah. It's obviously there were a lot of different kind of concepts that we packed into this episode. But what we would encourage you to do is figure out what direction you want to get, what direction you want to head, and then figure out how you can get there and how you can make it as enjoyable as possible and how you can make it as fulfilling as possible. And yes, fulfillment comes from doing things outside of your comfort zone. So it's not going to be, and it shouldn't be easy because we feel better about when we accomplish things that stretched us a little bit. So as you're thinking about your goals, as you're thinking about resolutions, things that you want to accomplish, build in things that are going to stretch you a bit, because that's how we grow as professionals, certainly, and as people, but it also makes us feel better about ourselves and makes us prouder of the things that we accomplish. So really kind of in a nutshell, this is March now when you're listening to this, and it's a perfect time to either go back and relook at the resolutions you set, maybe set a new resolution. If resolution feels weird to you, because there's a lot of baggage with that, look at your goals, or if goals feels weird, which actually I kind of get, the goal feels a little heavy to me too. What are your plans? What are you going to do? What's on your to-do list for this next month or this next quarter or this next week? What do you have built out? But look for ways to yes, make steps forward, move forward, because if we're just staying in one place, we're never going to get to our goals. So look for ways to make progress, but also look for habits that you can build in that will make that progress inevitable. Look for ways to make those habits or make those steps fun and celebrate them. Thank you, Kate. Yes.
That could be a resolution too, to say, I'm going to stop and reflect on my achievements. And maybe your resolution too is just, I'm going to do one thing that gets me out of my comfort zone every week. And maybe you have a list of things that get you out of your comfort zone, and every week you pick one to do. It doesn't have to be, it can be broad like that, and then get specific with the specific things that you're going to do to achieve it. But it doesn't have to be, I feel like it feels heavy if it becomes something so concrete, I guess is all that's to say. Yes, we need concrete goals to take action on, but it can be a broader theme, if you will, of getting out of the comfort zone, celebrating those wins, celebrating each time you get out of your comfort zone.
I love that. I love that. Like, what if your resolution were to find new ways to celebrate every time you accomplish each of your individual goals? And maybe you want to write out your individual goals or tasks or whatever, so you know what they are, because otherwise then it's a good excuse not to celebrate if you don't actually know what your goals were to begin with. But what if that was your resolution? What if you have to do all the stuff, this is your to-do list. What if your resolution were to celebrate as you accomplish each one? Like, that's fun. That's something that is easier to stick with, because it's about fun and enjoyment and being proud of yourself. I love that. So approach this concept of goals, approach this concept of resolutions or whatever. We would encourage you to approach it just from a slightly different angle. I think so many of us, especially the people who are listening to the podcast, we tend to be high achievers. We're the kinds of people who want more out of our lives. And often we have gotten to where we are and we've achieved things by working hard and pushing through. What we would encourage you to do is maybe just approach these things from a slightly different angle. Nobody wants to change a career. And in order to change that career, to get into copywriting, you have to be miserable the whole time. And I can tell you that you don't have to be. It's not a necessity by any means. It can be largely fun and enjoyable. So what we would encourage you to do is, yes, absolutely have goals, have to-dos, have resolutions if you want them, but how can you approach them differently to make them more effective, to make them more fulfilling, to make them more enjoyable, to make them more celebratory, and to make them more fun? And now's a great time to consider that. And you have a whole week until the next podcast episode comes out. So think of all that time. Maybe your resolution for this week is to come up with what your next set of resolutions are going to be. Ooh, how's that for being meta? Love it. Anyway, so that is what we would encourage you to do. Maybe just a little bit of gentle, loving homework. And with that, we will catch you guys in the next episode. Bye, everybody. Like what you heard? Hit subscribe so you never miss a video. And if you're ready to take the first step toward becoming a copywriter yourself, sign up for a free video training right here.